Welcome back to County Board Wrap Up, our monthly chat with the board members. I'm your host, Kara O'Donnell, and joining me today is Board Chair Libby Garvey and Board Member Christian Dorsey. Now, after a multi-year study and community engagement effort, the board voted at its December meeting to advertise major proposed changes to the residential permit parking program, a move that is not without its controversy. Libby, what exactly is being considered here?
Oh boy, a lot. And I think I'm not going to go into all of the details. I'll get one wrong, but we're really looking at, it's like the number of passes that somebody can have for a house, because we have, I mean, maybe we should really back up. There's certain portions of Arlington that have residential permit parking, and it's this program was begun decades ago because, and it was in Crystal City, a lot of commuters were coming in, parking in people's neighborhoods and then going to work and coming back, and people found their neighborhoods were crammed with cars and they didn't even live in Arlington. In this case, so we put in restrictions, and the case went all the way to the Supreme Court. And they found a bit that, you know, these are our streets, our taxpayers pay for them, and we have some right to use and regulate our own streets, and this is the curb. So that was kind of the beginning. And over time, more and more neighborhoods decided they wanted residential permit parking too. And then once you got one neighborhood that had the permit parking only, that would just push people to park somewhere else. And over time, it's kind of become clear that there got to be a lot of sort of inequities. This program was being put in place for reasons that really didn't have all that much to do with parking. In part, I think our staff that by the end found that something like 75% of the applications that came in didn't qualify. So there was some misunderstanding about what this program was actually for. And then we looked at it and realized it didn't seem to be really doing what it was supposed to be doing. So total relook, and we advertised it. Everything is online. It's a very complex program because it depends where you live and what your situation is. But one of the things they looked at, which I think was good, do homes have driveways on a particular neighborhood? Because we had one area that I think really prompted it was actually around Arlington Mill, and it was the Park Glen neighborhood, I think, next door. They had a program that had just barely gotten the permit parking approved, put it in place, and folks in there were a lot of folks in multifamily dwellings and in homes that did not have drives and garages who needed a place to park and put their car on the street. And suddenly they had much fewer opportunities, whereas in Park Glen, where the restrictions were in place, people had drives to put their cars in and garages to put their cars in, so the streets were empty. And then we started to feel, is that the streets are public property? You know, people don't actually own the street right in front of their house. That is the public right of way. So that was kind of the genesis of it all, and we're trying to work it out to make it more equitable, more efficient, and better for everybody, and make it clear what the program is and isn't. So I don't know if that was very clear. This is the most, I'd say maybe the most confusing topic I've had to deal with as a board member. So I'll hand it over to our economist friend, Mr. Dorsey, because this probably gets back down to basic econ, right? A scarce resource, I think, right?
Absolutely. How to allocate a scarce resource. And, you know, we've certainly found throughout this process that the program needed to evolve to take into account, you know, many of the current difficulties that we experience with it. So, you know, first and foremost, we want this to be a parking program. So it should really be responsive to areas where we have real limited supply of parking available on the street, and we have most households in the area who agree that they want to join in some level of restriction. So we updated the threshold by which people could successfully apply to participate in this program and the degree at which they experienced congested parking on streets. So one, restoring that link to this being a parking program. And then, you know, certainly this is something that we don't do on every street. We shouldn't do on every street. So, you know, as a function of county government, we didn't want the general population that didn't have RPP restrictions paying for those who do. So it increased the fees in order to make this a non-taxpayer supported program. And as a result of raising those fees to deal with this resource, we also provided for the ability for lower income households in these areas to receive a break, a discount on participating in the RPP. There are lots of different little nuanced changes, but all of them are designed to make the program more equitable, more efficient, and to make sure that when we go to this step of limiting parking that's available for visitors and guests and anyone else, that we do so with really good reason. And part of the changes also provided the ability for visitors and guests to have a little bit more access to these streets, provided that they pay. So they would pay the meter rates, although there wouldn't be meters installed, to get access to areas for a very limited time where RPP restrictions are in effect.
Interesting. Now, this was put up as a request to advertise for January, come up at the January meeting.
February, actually.
Oh, okay.
February. Yeah, we gave a little more time because this is so complex.
This one is pretty complicated, and of course, folks can find out more information online on the ins and outs of all the details of this proposal. But if it is approved, how soon would these new restrictions then go into effect, and can neighborhoods still get in on this, so to speak?
Got it. Well, the short answer is that depends. So with our February timeline, there is the possibility that the RPP program year, which begins, in April with notification and communication with communities to take effect in July, is a possibility that timeline could be met, but depending on what changes we actually implement, it may require that staff need to take more time before successfully implementing, in which case it would apply for the next RPP program year, which would begin next April 2022. And the other part of your question, Kara, I'm sorry, I just totally forgot.
For neighborhoods who may be interested in some in their area.
That's a really important point. We have 24 of these restricted zones already. Those are effectively are grandfathered in. It's not like this program undoes what they have in place, but all new applications for the program would be required to adhere to the new policy objectives whenever they are implemented, either 2021 or 2022.
Yeah, and I will just say two of the more contentious issues. One was, as Christian pointed out, we're looking at opening up these streets, so you can go down a street and nobody's parked there. The street's wide open, and yet you're not allowed to park, and that can be frustrating. So allowing 2-hour parking, but you got to pay. Then the question is, who's enforcing that? Who's going to make sure that's good? Because we're not using meters. So that's one of the issues that we're talking about, and has a lot of concern is the whole enforcement. The other issue is we lowered the number of permits that you get. Like if you live there, that you can have a permit to park your car on the street where you live. And so that is another one that is changing as well. So, but I think those are the two that people maybe discuss the most, because they're maybe the easiest to understand.